So just mixing it up, just to make people believe that we don't record two at one time. Hello everyone and welcome back to this week's Remind podcast. My name's David Masterton and I'm joined by Dr. Ashley Morland. And today we're talking about being reactive. I guess we've all been there before. Someone does something, says something, we see something, and then boom. So do we. So it's going to be an interesting one. So I believe this is going to be one of two that we're going to kind of record around this. So let's jump into being reactive. We've all seen it. We've all felt it. You being reactive at the moment, Ash?
Well, I have actually. Oh, let's put it this way. I don't think we're going to have iPads in our house for too much longer. That's been my reactivity. But anyway, I think that the most logical place to start this conversation is by defining reactivity. And when I teach on this, I mean, everyone knows reaction when they experience it, either, on the giving or receiving end. Everyone can see reactivity manifest in their daily lives, but something that people don't understand well is understanding what reactivity actually is. And when I teach on this, I talk about it from the nervous system point of view. So if I was to touch a hot stove, I'm going to have a reflexive action to remove my hand from the stove, because if I keep it there, it's going to burn me.
Oh, to protect yourself. You're reacting to protect yourself. Yeah.
It's safety and survival. So to understand reactions, the characteristics of a reflex are they are fast, they are completely automatic and unconscious, they are often exaggerated. And so we have reflexes throughout our whole entire bodies, from our pupils reflexively change their dilation to protect the eyes from light. We have the flexor withdrawal reflex. That's when we pull our hand away from, or even our foot if we're walking on a sharp surface. That's the thing that makes us take our foot off. We have another one called the crossed extensor reflex. The crossed extensor reflex is, well, guess what? If I take one foot off the ground, what has to happen on the other side of the body so that I don't fall over? We have to alter the way that our muscles kind of contract so that we can rebalance ourselves. So we have all these reflexes in our body that are purely designed for safety and survival. They're unconsciously driven by the nervous system. I don't have to sit there and cognitively think, gee, that's very hot. Brain, activate the bicep muscles to flex the elbow and activate the shoulder muscles to withdraw the hand.
It sounds like you're creating Voltron at the moment.
I've already got third degree burns.
Yeah.
So then the next part of, and I'm a word nerd, so we're breaking down the word reaction. Re is reflex, which means fast, automatic, and exaggerated. And action, which means we are doing something. It's something that we're doing, fast, automatic, and exaggerated. So when we think of reactivity, it is we might react fast, automatically, and exaggerated to an email that we receive. We might react to our children making a mess. We might react to iPads. Yes.
Couldn't help myself.
Totally. So when, and I really hope that's helpful for people, because when we are reactive, I feel like that people can go into shame a lot and also blame. Like if we are on the receiving end of someone else's reactivity, it's very easy for us to be able to see that it was irrational, except when we can understand that from their nervous system perspective, they literally did not have any capacity to make that not happen, because their nervous system, for whatever reason, whether it's rational or irrational, a real threat or not, their nervous system believed that that reflex was required in order for self-preservation, for their safety, for their survival, etc. So, for me, even within myself, when I observe reactivity, the invitation is to be able to go, whoa, what was that about? What was the threat in the environment? What was the insert self-reflection here? But I feel like that's a healthy place to start, is at least defining what is a reaction.
And look, the best thing for me to talk about reactive, I'll talk about the part of reactive that we're targeting, and then I'll sort of expand it just a little bit. So the reactive that I suppose, called to talk about is the one where something happens, and just like you said, you have a reaction. So let's describe what that may have looked like for me in the past. So if someone challenged my intellect or something like that, or did something that was really disrespectful to me, and I saw it and it was right in front of me, my reaction would be bigger than what they did to me, because it would have to be, it was instant. And it's sort of like, it's, you can get a big emotion, big energy, you can swear, you can raise your voice, but you don't realize you're almost in autopilot, just exactly like you said. And then later on, I'd spend time sort of going, I'll justify to myself why I did it. Because part of me was thinking, I probably didn't need to go that hard. But again, I'm justifying. Well, if they didn't do it, they had it coming. Blah, 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 blah. Another one that I had before was, I wouldn't go to the point of saying it was road rage, but wasn't too far off it. So if someone would cut me off, if they would be dumb driving, not indicating, have no awareness of what's going on, the reaction could be on the horn, doing this, and then suddenly as you calm down, you're kind of reflecting. And then over time you start to go, could I have done better there? That's the kind of reactivity we're talking about, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. It is a knee-jerk reaction. And then over time, as you start to become more aware of it, you then sort of become a lot more observant as to, could you have done it better? And if you could have done it better, then the shame can kind of kick in. But then you get into this, why am I being so reactive? Hence why we're doing this one. But reactivity could be also, I'll just point out where reactivity can be incredibly useful, incredibly great. And that's when it comes to comedy, when it comes to stand-up. Like some of the best stand-ups, when they're being interviewed, can be incredible when it comes to being able to say the right thing at the right time, recall the right story based on being agile in their mind. And they're not consciously thinking about it. It's just happening. It's just going. So we're not saying all reactions are bad. What we're talking about is the reactions where you kind of you involuntarily lose control. Yeah. And then you come back and go, I feel at some level I could have done better there. That's the reactive we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's massive, isn't it? Because I feel like the next logical place to take the conversation is, well, what are our survival instincts? We've got fight, flight, freeze, fawn. There's, depending on what book you pick up these days, I think they've taken it up to about 8 or 9 Fs now. But fundamentally, I tend to stick to the first 4. And what does that look like? Okay, so let's say, for instance, that someone makes a critical comment on our YouTube channel. And we go straight into a strong reaction without thinking. It's defensive, it's harsh, and it's about self-protection. So that comment, that critical comment, might be what our nervous system is perceiving as a threat. And because it feels threatening, our unconscious reaction is one of a fight response. And that fight response is the defensiveness, the harsh comment, which then escalates everything, right? What about if an example of a flight. Let's say you send a text message to a friend, they don't respond straight away. That then activates your core wounding, and so you just cold shoulder them. That's a flight. So you start to ignore them, you remove yourself from the friendship. That's an example of a flight, and that is not a conscious decision. That is literally an unconscious programming of, I need to remove myself from this relationship where I might be abandoned or rejected or whatever that might look like. Flight can also be like being super crazy busy and all that kind of stuff.
But before you go any further on that one, what's the difference between a flight response and just setting a boundary? What do you see?
Did you have control over it or not? Did it feel like an impulsive, compulsive decision where you had to do it in order to feel okay? Or were you already able to feel okay about it and then recognize that that was a boundary that honors you and your highest and best self?
So I guess what you're saying is, did you feel hurt or anger towards that person, or could you let them go with peace, knowing that, okay, it's not for you. They can do what they want to do, but they can do it over there.
Yeah, totally. And I think we might do a bit of a series on this, but I think we need to have a whole separate conversation on triggers and bait and all this sort of stuff, because I use an analogy of the salt in the wound, but I use an analogy of the salt in the wound, but it goes even deeper than that, because then there's what I call the chili or the acid, where regardless of whether or not we're wounded, that behavior is actually not acceptable. It's harmful, it's toxic, and it's damaging. And so
just to clarify that, what you're talking about in that is, if you got a cut on your hand and you put salt on it, it's going to feel like it's burning. Where if you put salt on your hand, and that cut, by the way, is a wound. You put salt on your hand, no cut, nothing. Go for your tequila shot, lick, suck, lipstick, suck, that whole thing.
Exactly.
But you pour acid on any healed skin or unhealed skin, it's going to burn. So that's what.
Yeah.
But wait for next week.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I feel like there's got to be a whole heap of subsequent conversations around this, because we need to understand triggers, which is a whole separate issue. Then we need to understand, well, what is the actual acid? What's the actual really unhealthy, dysfunctional stuff that we require to set a boundary, to uphold a higher standard, and to honor our highest and best self? And, how do we do that? Well, that's all very, very important. If you are interested in the answers to those questions, straight away go and click subscribe, because they're coming. It's just too much for this conversation. We want to really keep this relevant to why am I so reactive. So I'm sticking with some examples. So you've got your fight, you've got your flight. Freeze might be like procrastination. Believe it or not, procrastination is an unconscious reaction. So yes, it is still a reaction. It is a reflexive action that is trying to keep you safe. So that it might even be binge watching Netflix, doom scrolling on your phone. They are all they're all reactions to your nervous system being in a state of overwhelm, of complete dysregulation, trying to numb out. And then you've got fawning. So fawning reaction behavior is more like your people pleasing, more like, have you ever had a circumstance where something is happening and you find yourself saying yes to something or agreeing to something, and before you even realize that the words are coming out of your mouth, you're like, oh, I actually really don't want to do that. Why on earth did I say that? Why did I agree to that? And then you kind of, beat yourself up going, oh, now I'm stuck doing this thing and I really don't want to do it. So they're all examples of reactions that we're kind of talking about here. And I think, again, without understanding those fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses in how they play out in our relationships, we can't actually understand what is actually a reaction, i.e., self-preservation, moving away from discomfort towards pleasure, trying to evade a threat, trying to defend ourselves, trying to, justify our existence or prove our worthiness or whatever that looks like, versus what is an actually like really empowered, embodied, self-honoring decision that aligns with our highest and best self and our highest and best values. They're worlds apart.
Oh, 100%. And as you were talking, it reminded me of something that you've said many times in the past, which really grinded my gears, is that when you're triggered or you are reacting to something, there is some part of you that resonates to what that person's saying.
It's about agreement.
There's like some sort of, I'm like, I'm not, by the fact that I'm pissed off about what they said should clearly show you I'm not in agreement with this.
Yeah.
Right? But actually, it's sort of like, hang on, and I always come back to this sort of comparison, does a lion worry itself about the opinion of a sheep? Right? So whatever is sort of said, there has to be some kind of validity that you have given this statement or this action or whatever it is, which means that, as much as it grinds my gears, that when Ash says there is something that you're in agreement with what this person said, it's true. And then now I find, through gritted teeth, I have to say to myself, what part of this do I agree with?
Yeah.
Because it's quite challenging. But then you start to sort of see, okay, well, what is it? Is it what they're saying makes sense? Or, I've had situations where I've had relationships with people where I've outwardly said, oh, it doesn't matter what they say. Mm-hmm. They could hate me, love me, whatever it is, yet still somehow they can say something and it gets under my skin.
Isn't that so frustrating?
And so with gritted teeth, what part of this do I agree with?
Yeah. And I want to point something out here. This is a spiritual concept, actually. And it absolutely exploded my brain when I learned about this from one of my mentors, because I had done really like surface level mindset work, right? So we talk about limiting beliefs, and that's the buzzword of the whole, NLP world and all this sort of stuff. So there is this whole entire concept of limiting beliefs. And honestly, it's cooked me. I'm so done with limiting beliefs. But this whole agreement thing.
But just on that, is that because the way it's being used, or
people don't understand it? People talk about it, but they don't actually understand it at the level of spiritual beingness. And that's what I'm going to kind of talk about now. So it was important for me when I first started my journey to understand a limiting belief. Like, oh my gosh, how could I believe something that's holding me back? Really important concept, but to an extent, the change and shift that I experienced was still somewhat limited. And this is how this played out. So one of my mentors started teaching on the spiritual significance of agreements. And an agreement is, there's essentially 3 layers. There are things that we are in agreement with. I am in agreement that I am a female. Then there are things that I am in disagreement with. Now, if something is triggering me and someone says something and I don't like that they're saying it, it essentially means that on some level I am in disagreement. Disagreement is still agreement.
So it's a form of agreement, just on the opposite side.
It's a form of agreement. It's just the other side of the coin. So the third is separate to both of those. The third is non-agreement. So if someone came along and tried to say, okay, Ash, you're a boy, I'd be like, I'm not in agreement with that. I have no reaction. I have absolutely no reaction to that whatsoever. I just look at them and go, what are you smoking? No, I'm not in agreement with that. I don't have an emotional reaction. But what happens if I was on some level, consciously or unconsciously, feeling gender confused? And I could know with every cell of my being that I am a girl, and someone came along and started giving me crap that I look like a boy or I talk like a boy or something, and I want to get defensive and reactive. Do you see how I don't like it, but I'm in agreement with what they're saying? And that was kind of true for me in my teenage years. I used to get very, very defensive around that because I grew up racing BMX. All my best friends were boys. I wore boys' clothes. But if someone had have said something like that, I would have been very reactive because I wanted to defend myself. But non-agreement is like, no, I am 100% absolutely fully embodied that I am a girl, I am a female. There is no doubt in my mind. Someone could come and give me their best argument and it still wouldn't change my mind. I'm simply in non-agreement with it.
Yeah.
And so when we see, like, the most common that I see in this is in the I don't deserve love kind of belief, or I'm not worthy of love. People can know that they are worthy of love consciously. They can know that, but yet they'll be in an unhealthy relationship that is not treating them in a loving way. They can not like that they're in that relationship that is dysfunctional, but the fact that they continue to choose to be in it means that they are at the level of disagreement. They're still in agreement with it because they're still choosing it. They're still showing up for it every single day. But the fact that they don't like it means that it's disagreement to the very thing that they're continuing to choose. Non-agreement is like, I'm worthy of love. This isn't love. I'm out of here. That's non-agreement.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that becomes relevant, because our reactions to things, our reflexive reactions, can point to the dysfunctional agreements that we have within us. And quite often these were things that, and like, I mean, think about this from a spiritual perspective. Imagine curses. Imagine a curse spoken over you saying, you're not going to go anywhere in life.
Yeah, gotcha.
As a child, right? So imagine these words that are spoken over us as children. You're going to go nowhere in life. You're going to amount to nothing. You're stupid. You're dumb. You're lazy. And the things that are spoken over us in our early life, we are extremely vulnerable because what's called critical faculties aren't even developed yet. So unless we have people around us who can speak truth into our lives and put the stake in the ground and realign the agreements that we have, we're going to come into agreement with those curses because we have no capacity on our own to be able to come up against them. So if someone of authority says, oh, you're going to amount to nothing, we, without knowing any better, come into agreement with it and then either play that out for the rest of our lives and actually agree with it and go, oh, I'm worth nothing. I'm going to amount to nothing. I might as well just sit on the dole and do nothing with my life. Then you have people who are in disagreement, which means they are striving, they're performing, they're doing their best to prove that they're going to amount to something. But anytime there's a threat against that, anytime they make a mistake, anytime, they lose a promotion or whatever that might look like, they don't like it and they get reactive because there's the disagreement where the agreement is you're not going to amount to anything, and they're striving to prove that agreement wrong. They're going to fight against it. Whereas coming out of agreement, there's no reaction, because non-agreement with that is going, I break this off, I rebuke it. When I break off that agreement that I'm going to amount to nothing in my life, I know that I'm going to be able to fulfill the fullness of my purpose and potential, and I'm going to amount to exactly what is destined for my life, and people can say whatever they want about it. It might not look like I'm super successful from the outside, but hey, I'm following my path. I'm in alignment. I'm this, I'm that. And so non-agreement means that people can say whatever they want. People can judge. People can have their opinions. It's safe for me to lose. It's safe for me to fail. It's safe for me to try again. It's safe for me to take a different path because I'm not in agreement with that at any level. And so the reactivity is really powerful in showing us what are the agreements in our lives? Where do we get defensive and protective? because that's showing us where are we unconsciously. I literally call it partnering with the devil. Where are we unconsciously partnering with the devil in our lives and we don't even know it?
Well, you've just set something off inside of me when you were saying that. And
You're welcome, and I'm sorry.
No. Thank you, because it's now story time with David. Everyone sit down, grab your cuppa. So growing up, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. And so back before ADHD was highly well known, very active boy, but emotionally stunted, just because, emotions were a bit too big for me. So it had a certain set of behaviours that came with it. Me just trying to navigate the best I could, parents doing the best they could, teachers doing the best they could, but there wasn't a cohesion. And I was kind of like the odd part in the formula. And so it it gave way for a lot of people being triggered around me because of my actions, me also being one of them. So the things that I would hear is, if you keep on going this way, you're going to end up in jail. If you keep on going this way, you're going to end up in a really bad position. You're going to be lucky to make your next birthday. You're going to be, And so when you said that, it's sort of like a couple of little, we'll call them little firecrackers, went off right, almost at the bottom of my intestines, right?
Yeah.
Like right down there. And I sort of went, ooh. And it reminded me of when anyone would challenge or trigger that in the past. It was almost like, and I'm going to go with the pyrotechnics theme here because I'm a bit of a fiery guy by nature. If someone would have challenged that, it's like they would have lit a very quick fuse to a massive firework, right? And this firework would explode out within, from within me, out everywhere. It's a complete reaction. It's sort of like hit the button, boom. And from there, my reaction would be, well, take a look at yourself. Who the fuck are you to talk about it? And then I wanted to hurt them. I wanted to put them back in their place. I wanted them to regret even saying that and add some extra spice. So if you even have a think about coming back to that same place again, you won't want to. And that's a complete reaction. But I'll justify it based on going, well, they asked for it. Now, there's no agreement. However, there's still a reaction, clearly. But it's a lot smaller, so it's a bit more of an observation. And I guarantee I'll get to a point where it's sort of like you saying that, or anyone saying those words, will be no different to someone coming up to me and going, I believe they should be using plastic jars instead of glass jars to, put Vegemite in. It's all like, okay, sure. It's almost like, I don't care. It's not that you don't care. It's just like, I have, this has zero relevance to anything. And I think that's that level of non-agreement that you're sort of talking about. It's like, it's just allowed to be. You want to put your Vegemite in glass jars, craft, we'll go for it. You want to put it in plastic jars?
There's no wound.
Okay. If you prefer to have a pink roof over a grey roof, okay. There's nothing that kind of resonates. And I think that's really the difference, where it's sort of like, if you're feeling as though there's little, because when you said it, I actually felt it in my body before my brain even had a chance to go, what the just happened?
Yeah.
Right? It's like these little cap guns, that bang, 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 just like these tiny little things. It's sort of like, there's a reaction. There you go, people.
It's huge, isn't it? Because wounding and not disagreement go hand in hand. Healing and non-agreement go hand in hand. I don't have clients who are in agreement with their dysfunction, for the simple fact that by the time they get to me, they're already at the point of realizing that their life is dysfunctional. So the really interesting thing is when I have, and this is where I've had to really learn a level of maturity around this, that there are some people in my life, loved ones even, who do not have the capacity yet to even see the unhealthy agreements they have in their lives, because they're fully in agreement with it. They're still choosing it. They're still absolutely choosing abuse, neglect, rejection, absolutely everything you can imagine. They're still consciously choosing it, willfully, not even willing to see that it's dysfunctional yet. And I honor them and their sovereign experience. It's not even worth having a conversation with them about anything more than that yet, because they're in agreement with it. So from there, the next step is disagreement. As soon as someone starts recognizing, hang on a second, I don't think this is right. I don't think you should be treating me like that. I don't think I should be treating myself like that. I don't think I should be talking like that. I don't think I should be striving and aiming and performing and trying to prove myself like that. Hang on a second. There's something not... No, I don't want to do that anymore. That's when you start to unlock the capacity for change. And so when people get stuck in that point, that's when the reactivity starts. That's when things like all of a sudden they've allowed someone to speak to them completely disrespectfully their whole entire lives. And then they reach disagreement and they start biting back and saying, don't you speak to me like that. Don't you speak to me like that. Don't you speak to me like that.
How dare you?
How dare you speak to me like that? Don't you speak to me like that? See how that's a level of disagreement, but yet because they continue to repeat themselves, they're still in agreement with them speaking to them like that, because it still continues to happen. And so then what does non-agreement look and sound like? Non-agreement is literally, if they continue to speak to me like that, I'm not in agreement with that. I'm not going to continue to dance and I'm not going to continue to play at that level. So I'm going to play here. And if they want to play with me, the new agreement is this is how we do relationship. This is how we do communication. This is what this looks like. And so all of a sudden, there's a consequence of that happening, which might look like falling away. It might look like, I'm going to end this conversation here. It might look like whatever. And I think this might be an episode for a few away, because I can see a sequential order of this playing out. But when we bring it back to the level of reactivity, what are the things that we are reacting to on a daily basis? Is it we get reactive? So a big one that I'm really conscious of for myself is I feel very reactive when things land on me, when I have to do it all by myself. Now, I can see that that's at the level of disagreement. I'm not in non-agreement with that, because if I was in non-agreement, I would simply make the decision. I would have a plan. I would execute the plan that says, okay, there's this many public holidays in a year. There's this many pupil-free days. You just let me know which ones you'll be taking care of. Simple. I'm not doing that. I'm waiting till the pupil-free day or the public holiday rolls around and everyone else goes to work. And then I sit in this frustration of going, it always lands on me. Why does it land on me? It's always my... So do you see how I'm still in agreement that I'm doing it all on my own, or that I have to hold all the responsibilities, because I'm not making changes that allow for any other outcome. So I might not like it. And I might feel resentful and I might get frustrated and I might feel hurt over it. But the very fact that I have not altered my behaviors or altered my decision making or changed my planning or had any other thing that I've executed says that I'm actually still in agreement with doing it all by myself.
Yeah, but I think also you need to give yourself a break here, because it's like there are some things that, like, you can't not be reactive when you're punched in the face. I'm not saying this is what's happening in this case, but here's a clear example of, what we're talking about here. You apply it to being punched in the face. That you know, right? If you get punched in the face, you're going to want to try and duck. You're going to try and be reactive.
Absolutely, because
you're going to feel the pain. It's not sort of something like I need to center myself to understand that the punch in the face was good for me.
Yeah. Right.
There are some things, especially when it comes to being reactive or being in agreement. It's sort of like, you're in this scenario, you're not being supported. Now, does a change of mindset help that? Possibly, to sort of just lower the bar on everything, but you're still not being supported. Are you allowed to feel that, support might be better, then,
Except it's not a real threat. Because I could have organised school holiday care. I could have said ahead of time. I could have planned out and gone, okay, these are the public holidays. We're going to divvy this up. Which ones do you want? Which ones? Oh, okay, you don't have a preference? Excellent. These dates, they're with you. The other dates, they're with me. I'll take the day off work. You do this. And we have a plan. And all of a sudden, guess what? That story doesn't belong anymore.
Agreed.
But that requires... And so I guess, because that's not a real threat, right? It's actually just a story that's playing out. It's a perceived threat, but I have unconsciously taken steps, or in this case, not taken steps to land here in this moment where things have played out in a certain way. And so I didn't even give anyone else a chance to say, no, I won't do that, or no, I can't be available, or whatever. Because if it was planned, 5 months in advance at the start of the school year, those dates are going to be blocked out in their calendar. They're not going to have work or clients or whatever. And all of a sudden, guess what?
Okay, so
I'll do what... It's an unconscious...
Yeah.
It's totally unconscious, which is where I'm saying we don't get, and I really appreciate your perspective, and I appreciate you getting defensive on my behalf, trying to give me an out, but I can clearly see where I've contributed to this pattern in my life, and the frustration and the energy and the emotion that I put behind it is me in the level of disagreement. Whereas if I was in non-agreement, it wouldn't all land on me because other plans would have been put in place, whether that's paying to outsource, whether that's, organising other of the parents to take a day off. I don't get to whinge about it when I have set this whole thing up for failure. So there are totally, but my reactivity is pointing to my disagreement. I don't like it, yet I still let it happen.
Because it's sometimes nice to be right. Mm-hmm. So
I get a massive dopamine hit out of it, by the way.
So in essence, because you left it a little bit longer and didn't pre-plan it, then what you're sort of doing is there's this, we'll call it story, since we love these words out there like limiting beliefs and stories and all of that, you've actually created a bit of extra evidence for this story.
Yep,
as well. Okay.
Absolutely. Now, that is an example, because the thing that people need to understand from a neuroscience perspective, we release dopamine when we predict things correctly. So my brain gets rewarded every single time I am left to do everything on my own. Even though I don't want to do everything on my own, I'm still in agreement with doing everything on my own, and I set it up for the dopamine hit, and then I don't like it. Do you see how this will play out in so many aspects of our lives where if we took responsibility and we took a different approach, we communicated things differently, we upheld different standards, people don't have to like it, but we can go, okay, it's okay if you don't like it. That's totally fine. But this is my standard. I'm not in agreement with me doing everything on my own.
Yeah.
So, if that's totally fine. You can book in school holiday care. You can do this. You can get a babysitter. You can do whatever you do you. But I'm not going to do it all anymore. I'm not in agreement with that. So this is a real life example of where I am revealing in real time stuff about where I have work to do, where I have my own wounding and fears. Because you got to understand at a really dysfunctional level, I get a lot of significance and safety out of doing it on my own because I've been let down by other people so many times. And if I do it myself, they can't let me down. Even though then doing it myself feels hurtful and isolating. So there is a self-preservation tactic. Totally there's a self-preservation tactic in trying to carry all the responsibility. And so most people who have this level of control or have this level of something that they whinge about in their lives, if this is you listening, I know this is going to be really heavily triggering and activating. And our next episode will go into what that trigger and what that activation actually is with the unresolved wounding and everything else at a deeper level. But I invite you to really start looking at what are the things that I complain about that I don't like, and how am I unconsciously, not intentionally. No one wakes up every day and goes, oh, what can I do today to make sure I have to do everything by myself? I don't do that. But when we step back and look at life, I can clearly see right back, 12 months in advance, I can see the chain of events that led to this. And if I were to change aspects of those chains of events, walk away instead of staying, set a standard here, set a boundary there, communicate something there, make a plan there, be organized and prepared there, where I am today would be completely different. And so if where I am today is completely different and it's more functional, I'm not in agreement with that anymore. So for Ash a year from now, the question is, what are the actions? How, if I am in non-agreement with that anymore, what's my new agreement? The new agreement is I don't do everything on my own. So what is required of the version of me who doesn't do everything on her own? She's got to do things differently, doesn't she? She's got to communicate differently. She's got to plan differently. She's got to organize differently. And that, my friends, is the difference.
Love it. Love it.
Sorry for throwing a grenade at you today, Dave.
No, it's all good. I mean, sticking with the pyrotechnics theme of this show, that's good. Grenade, I love it. Another big show coming up next week.
Yeah.
Look, if a lot of this stuff's sort of resonating, I know it can feel a bit heavy, a bit triggering maybe, or, maybe you're in disagreement with it. Let us know. Comment below.
Totally okay.
Yeah.
Super okay to be in disagreement with it. Let us know so that we can support you if you want to, go deeper, explore more. It's super okay. Powerful.
Absolutely. All right. Till next week. Thank you everyone for listening, and au revoir.